And joining us now on the line, Peter Brookes, Heritage Foundation Senior Fellow, former Deputy Assistant Secretary of Defense, all-around nice guy. Good morning to you, Peter. How are you?
Good morning. Good morning, guys.
Listen, we are, well, maybe I'm just the only one. I'll just speak for myself. I'm very confused about what we're doing in the Gulf of Aden.
Yeah.
So we got all these Iranian ships that we think are carrying weapons to the rebels in Yemen, and we decide, well, we're going to send over a carrier group to sort of, well, we thought they were maybe going to stop them from delivering the weapons, but now we're told, no, that's not what we're doing. We're just watching them. And what is going on here?
Well, you know, it's very interesting, Brian. I mean, I wrote about this today in today's Boston Herald yesterday, and I checked this morning, and there's no news on this. For hours, the Pentagon has been very silent. Obviously, this administration has been able to keep some sort of secret because the president the other night on MSNBC said that he was worried about weapons coming from Iran that might threaten navigation. And so that's a different category of weapons than, you know, machine guns or grenades or small rockets that the Houthis, Iran's allies, might want. That talks about, you know, shipping lanes, at sea, and all that sort of stuff. So I think there's probably two. If the president didn't misspeak or didn't mislead us, my sense is that there might be something on those ships that are still in international waters that might be something like anti-ship ballistic missiles or maybe sea mines.
Mines,
Yeah, that's another possibility. Now, I in my column today, I said I leaned more towards missiles because the mines are much more indiscriminate once they're put out there. It's hard to target exactly who you're after, but with a missile, such as a cruise missile or a ballistic missile, you could target specific targets. And so I'm not sure what's out there, but boy, it's been awful quiet.
Well, you know, if memory serves me correct, and I think I'm right about this, the Iranian Navy's not that big, but they do have a lot of these anti-ship missiles that were sold to them by the Chinese.
That's right, exactly. And in fact, Hezbollah used a C-802 cruise missile against an Israeli frigate during their war. So these things have been used before. The Iranians have talked about closing the Straits of Hormuz with these missiles. And in fact, back in the 1980s, I actually flew out there on Navy missions when the Iranians, during the Iran-Iraq War and the tanker war, had deployed Silkworm missiles. Now, they have more capable missiles. In fact, one of them is known as an aircraft carrier killer, which is an anti-ship ballistic missile. And you're right. My understanding is that the Chinese have been working with the Iranians on these capabilities.
Peter Brookes, in your op-ed today in the Boston Herald, you basically say so much for the nuclear deal. You said that the whole reason why Obama was trying to do this was so he could have a Richard Nixon in China kind of moment. Do you think that based on what's going on right now, not just with our Navy, but also on the ground in Yemen, that this is pretty much over, this nuclear deal?
Well, I'm not sure about that. I mean, they've got the second phase. I mean, talks started yesterday in Vienna. They've moved from Switzerland to Austria. I think it's going to be very tough because the Iranians, once again, are coming out and saying, we want all of the sanctions lifted immediately. And that's not something I think that Congress or even the other P5+1 partners will sign on to. So I think that's a very, very difficult thing. And, of course, now these ships are still in international waters, these Iranian cargo ships, and they're creeping along at about 5 miles an hour, 5 knots, and they may never go to Yemen. They could divert because of the fact that people seem to be watching them, the U.S. Navy and aircraft carrier Roosevelt.
Now they're claiming, we're here to fight piracy.
Well, they do have warships down there too. That's the other side, Brian. They have deployed a couple of ships down there, and they said they're involved in counter-piracy operations. Now, if this thing escalates, now if these ships try to go into port and somebody decides to board them, a hostile boarding or something like that, I can't believe that it wouldn't affect what's going on in Vienna at the nuclear talk. So this is very risky calculation. Now, once again, these ships could make a left-hand turn and head for the African coast as opposed to going in there. We've seen this sort of activities with North Korea in the past when they've been called out on carrying cargoes they shouldn't be moving. So that's a possibility. And once again, these ships, my understanding, haven't made a break for national waters of Yemen. They're still in international waters.
Based on the standard rules of engagement for our Navy in that area, if there is good reason to believe that an Iranian ship has weapons that would be delivered to Yemen for the the rebels there, and we, of course, are backing the Yemeni government, and we've given them our support. Do we have the right to, and would we, based on our rules of engagement, would we board those Iranian ships?
Well, here's a couple interesting things. The thing we haven't brought up yet is that the UN Security Council passed a resolution recently banning putting an arms embargo on the Yemeni rebels, the Houthis. So the White House could use this as justification for boarding these ships. Now, when you talk about boarding, there's two types basically, or probably three types: permissive, non-permissive, and then hostile. So you can go to these Iranian ships and say, and if these pictures that I'm seeing on television are correct, I don't know if they're file footage or not, but these things are piled high in shipping containers, and there's 7 to 9 of them, and there's a lot of searching to be done. You can ask the captain and say, "May I come aboard to inspect your cargo?" Now he can say, if he says yes, then you go ahead and inspect. If he doesn't, then you have to make a decision whether you're going to force your way on board or even you take some sort of direct military action to prevent the ship. The other option is, of course, is to let them go into port. And then if you were unhappy with the cargo, you could take out the cargo once it's off the Iranian ships if you wanted to keep the escalation level at a lower level instead of, Iran would say, these are Iranian ships, you're violating our sovereignty. So, I don't know. I'm sure this is something that's being discussed, at high levels within the government as they watch these ships go forward. And at some point, they're going to have to make a decision. If these ships make a break, well, they won't go very fast, but if they make a break towards a port in Yemen, a safe port where they could unload.
I mean, there's no doubt that we could dominate the situation, but they have the ability to inflict some harm, don't they?
Yeah, well, sure, absolutely. You mean talk about the weapons we're talking about?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Well, of course, now there's probably, the Iranians are probably going to say it's humanitarian aid, et cetera, et cetera. There might be, small arms and things like that, rockets that would support the Houthi rebels, and then once again, it could be something a lot more risky like sea mines or anti-ship ballistic missiles. But yes, the U.S. could certainly do something about it, and that's the reason the carrier's there. I mean, when the President and the State Department and others came out and said, we're talking about freedom of navigation, freedom of the seas, and you send an aircraft carrier there, most people kind of scratched their head and said, that's kind of unusual. Who's threatening the freedom of navigation down there? There's no major navies besides the United States. The Saudis are there a little bit. The Egyptians are there a little bit. There's some counter-piracy operations. So people said, yeah, this is a cover for something else. And it appears that the concern is that there's things on the ship. They're trying to deter the Iranians from going to port, go someplace else, and if they have to, they may have to take military action at some point.
Meanwhile, real fast, Peter Brookes, Barack Obama on Tuesday on MSNBC said that the U.S. is sending a very direct message to Iran about supplying the Houthi rebels. And then the next day, the State Department spokeswoman Marie Harf said that it's misreporting to suggest that U.S. ships were there to monitor the Iranian ships. What kind of message is that sending to Iran?
I think it's a mixed message, and unfortunately, they need to get on the same sheet if they're going to send a signal of strength to Iran.
Thank you. Well, you talk about sending a signal of strength. I think Marie Harf at the State Department, she personifies that.
I mean, she just puts the fear of God in you, doesn't she? All right. Listen, thank you very much. Appreciate it, Peter.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks so much.